The art of asking questions is so important to insurance sales. It's the difference between maybe you having a chargeback or that business staying on the books. So, we're going to dive into some pretty simple questions on how you can hopefully attain more success in this time tested and absolutely noble profession. So before I go into this, my name is Jason. I'm your friend in the business, and I'm so blessed to recruit and just partner with the most amazing agents as well as agencies across this nation selling life, Medicare, and annuities together, face to face, as well as in the telespace. So if you need any free resources, jasonfinalexpense.com, and let's get right after it today. So a lot of times when you're dealing with chargebacks, it's because your value proposition wasn't prioritized higher than maybe that pack of cigarettes was. This is all about just slowing down. Men and women, I promise, in Final Expense Telesales, you've got to slow things down. You wouldn't be married right now if you went that fast on a date. And when it comes to dialing leads and getting into that phone script, you've got to slow your roll. You've got to relax. You've got to enjoy the journey here. Just like when you're going on an amazing date and got engaged, and now maybe you're married right now. You've got to make it about the person that's across the table from you. And that's going to come through questions, not through you just talking. You know what I'm talking about? Some people are just so exhausting. It's like a one way valve. It's like you get up from maybe the conversation and you're like, oh, thank goodness I'm done with that. And it's because it's a one way valve. In insurance sales, we can be victims of doing this. Yes, doing this to our consumers. And I've been guilty of this amongst other things in my career as well. So don't think you're somehow down on yourself because that's what you're doing right now, because that's what maybe you were taught and you didn't know how to take it to the next level. So, we're going to talk about some really simple questions. Instead of tell, and thinking that we're going to sell, we're going to take some time to ask questions. One question is, what would your family's life look like if you had no protection in place today? That's an amazing word picture where the client is framing what they would find to be true. If the client sees their family in a good place or in a bad place, that's based on you helping them frame the big picture. You've got to find the right questions if you want to get the best chance of really unpacking the right answers here. And that's you asking questions. What would? So if you're taking notes, write down what would your families look like? What would your family's life look like if X, Y, and Z? All right. This is going to be very important to help them understand what things would look like if they don't take that policy with you, if they don't move forward and buy life insurance with you. What would your family's life look like if they had no protection in place today? Pose is Mrs. Johnson, if something were to happen, where would the dollars come from to pay for burial, funeral, cremation costs? Where would those dollars come from? And just be quiet. Let them say what they desire to say to you, but ask what would your family's life look like? Where would is another great pattern when you're dealing with a final expense telesales call. Ask them where would those dollars come from if something happened, or where would those dollars come from when something takes place in the future? And we hope it's a long ways from now. But what would happen then? How would their life look like? Okay. How would their life look if we have nothing? And how would their life be benefited if you bought life insurance? And don't be afraid of tripping over your own tongue. I'm doing it right now. That's okay. Slow down, enjoy the journey, my friends. And if you've ever had a moment where nobody's listening to you, ask these simple questions, because the problem here has to be bigger than the pack of cigarettes. You have to frame the question, frame what's going on so that they understand there's a reason to be going with you. There's a reason to go move forward with jasonfinalexpense.com. There's a reason to move forward with you and have you be their person, their person. You want to be that guy, that gal that they want to get with. They want to get with you to get the protection so that they have a policy. Sell them the right policy because you posed the right questions. Ask them consequence questions. What would your family's life look like if they didn't have coverage? How would they be impacted positively by you owning life insurance, or how would your family be impacted by you not having anything in place today? And then stop and listen. My friends, questions control calls. If somebody says, is this term or is this whole life? Don't make the mistake that I did early on and start blabbing about what term does and blabbing about what whole life does. Just stall for a second and then go, Mr. Johnson, is term or whole life the most important to you? What's most important to you, Mr. Johnson? Or ask, what do you like about term versus whole life? Or what do you like about whole life versus term? Do you have a preference? And then be quiet and let them speak to you, because sometimes people say, I only want term. And I've made the mistake of not asking the questions right in my career, especially early on. And I've done this industry such a long time. And I've gotten tripped up early on in my career. And I've done this industry over 2+ decades with my telesales experience combined with my insurance background. It's nuts to think of the journey, the beautiful journey that has been. But I've also made these mistakes, these faux pas myself. And I've answered quickly. Don't. Just silence yourself for a question. Silence yourself for a moment. See, tripped over again. It's okay. And then ask the simple question, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate you asking that. Is term the most important type of policy that you want to own, or is whole life important? And what do you like about term, and what do you like about whole life? Would you mind sharing that with me? Ask these questions, and you may find that the consumer says, oh, I want term because it's got cash value. And you're like, oh, here we go. All right, now you know what they desire. Maybe they want cash value. Maybe cash value to them is worthless. You'll never know if you don't ask questions like, what do you like about term the best? Or what makes the most sense to you, Mr. Johnson? Are you desiring a term, life insurance policy, or would you prefer whole life? And what about, your favorite? Do you like the best? Ask these questions. Ask consequence questions, because your problem has to be bigger than the pack of cigarettes. And then sometimes we just got to get out of the way, my friends. We got to get out of the way so that the client can tell us what they want us to do for them. We can be a humble servant to help sell them a policy. Yes, sell them a policy. And that is powerful when you pose the right questions. So ask consequence questions. Ask questions about what they desire in a life insurance policy, what they want it to do, all right, how much coverage they want. If it's their idea, you know what? You're not a pushy salesman when you pose the solution that they've asked you for. It's not about force. In telesales, my friends, it's about finesse. It's about slowing down. It's about having the right words, having the right script, and just being sincere in how you execute every phone call, because it does get frustrating at times when you deal with chargebacks. It gets frustrating at times when you feel like you're trying to slam a square peg into a round hole. That happens too. There's some folks that won't be nice to you. You're going to get a lot of rejection in this space. And that's why a lot of times 90% of the agent force fails, because they weren't mentored right. They weren't trained right. They didn't have a work family like ours that really stands by their side and helps them pin out the right questions at the right moment, really. It's about asking at the right time. You don't want to be asking certain questions in your script, sometimes too soon, too early, but we can help you with that if you'd like. If you need resources or you need the right questions or word trails, reach out at jasonfinalexpense.com. We'll be a resource for you, but ask the right questions, slow down, all about the consequence questions, all about creating value, framing the questions so that they never question themselves on why they did business with you. Agents that are pushy have a really high fall off rate, and it's because they were high pressury. They never posed consequence questions, so you didn't create a true need. We were just focusing on what we need, and that's the sale. And that's maybe why your sales aren't sticking right now. Be that solution as opposed to that kind of slimy, salesman that a lot of times we're painted as. We can do better than this by really being that advocate for our consumer and executing on their desires. I hope this helps you. I hope it gets you more profitability. If we can do anything to serve you at all, jasonfinalexpense.com. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Share it with a buddy if you have. Thank you for subscribing. Hit the notification bell. My long content will do its best job to bring value to you today. Remember, you've got what it takes. We'll see you soon.